Emily Stevens never imagined her quiet college life would unravel in the blink of an eye. But one discovery changed everything. Sarah Jacobs, a classmate and casual friend, was about to become the only person who knew the dangerous secret Emily had been hiding: an affair with Dr. Carter Hayes, a respected professor at Millfield University. When Sarah uncovered the truth, she was forced to choose between loyalty and morality, setting off a chain of events that would expose the darkest side of academia and change both their lives forever. It all began on a typical autumn morning at Millfield University, where the campus buzzed with students rushing to classes and the scent of freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air. Emily Stevens, a 20-year-old biology student, was no different from the other eager undergraduates, except for one thing: she was hiding a secret. On the surface, she was a model student, excelling in her studies, participating in extracurricular activities, and keeping a low profile in the social circles of the university. She was often admired for her dedication, her intelligence, and her quiet charm, and she wore her public persona like armor. But behind closed doors, Emily's life was far from ordinary. Her secret was a relationship that could destroy everything. She had worked for an affair with Dr. Carter Hayes, her professor. Dr. Hayes was in his early 40s, a respected figure at Millfield, known for his sharp intellect and charming demeanor. He was the kind of professor who could command a lecture hall with ease, holding his students' attention with a combination of wit and charisma. To the outside world, he was an academic star, but to Emily, he was something else, something forbidden. Their relationship had started innocently enough during office hours when Emily needed help with her research paper. She had always been shy, but Dr. Hayes made her feel comfortable. His encouragement fueled her academic ambitions, and before long, their meetings became more personal. They began talking about things outside of class, sharing moments of vulnerability, revealing pieces of their lives to each other. What began as a mentor-mentee relationship gradually evolved into something far more complicated. Emily had always been an emotionally reserved person, but with Dr. Hayes, she found herself opening up in ways she had never done before. They would spend hours discussing everything from the pressures of academia to their personal dreams and fears. He seemed to understand her like no one else, and his attention made her feel special, important. But beneath the kindness was something darker, something Emily couldn't quite put her finger on, an underlying tension, a sense of power imbalance that she tried to ignore. As the weeks went by, their interactions began to cross boundaries. One evening, after a late-night study session, Dr. Hayes invited Emily to his office under the pretense of discussing her thesis. The office was dimly lit, with only a desk lamp casting shadows across the walls. The conversation shifted from research to personal matters. He complimented her, telling her how impressive she was, both intellectually and personally. His words, initially flattering, became more suggestive as the evening wore on. Emily, taken off guard by his sudden shift in tone, felt a mix of confusion and intrigue. She had always respected Dr. Hayes, but there was a strange pull in the air between them, something she couldn't ignore. That night, their first kiss was tentative, almost uncertain, but it was enough to ignite something within both of them. Emily was overwhelmed with a sense of guilt, but also excitement. She knew what they were doing was wrong. He was her professor, after all. But it felt like a forbidden connection she had never experienced before. Their physical relationship continued to develop in secret, with stolen moments between lectures, hidden away from the prying eyes of the campus. They exchanged private messages, each one more intimate than the last, each one deepening their bond. but Emily's heart began to twist in knots. What was once an innocent connection was now a dangerous affair, one that threatened everything she had worked for. Yet there was a part of her that couldn't walk away. The line between right and wrong had blurred, and now she found herself trapped in something far more complicated than she could have ever imagined. It was a rainy afternoon when Sarah Jacobs, Emily's classmate, unknowingly stumbled upon a piece of information that would change everything. Sarah was an average student, often found in the library with her nose buried in textbooks, struggling to balance academics and a busy social life. She had always admired Emily from afar, intrigued by her quiet intelligence and effortless charm. The two weren't close friends, but they shared a few classes, exchanged pleasantries, and occasionally studied together in groups. That day, Sarah had been waiting for Emily in the campus cafe after their last class. Emily had been running late, so Sarah sat by the window scrolling through her phone. After a few minutes, Emily rushed in, visibly distracted, and set her bag down on the table. She apologized quickly as she dug through her bag, looking for her phone. Sarah watched her curiously, but it wasn't until Emily excused herself to the restroom that Sarah noticed the phone left behind. It was an innocent moment, one Sarah might have easily ignored. But there was something about the phone being left unattended that piqued her curiosity. She had seen Emily glance at her messages a few times before, and she knew that Emily's phone was almost always locked with a passcode. But this time, the screen was on, and Sarah couldn't help but notice an open thread of messages from an unfamiliar contact, titled Carter. At first, Sarah thought little of it, but the first few words of the message caught her attention. There was something about the way they were written, too personal, too familiar for a professor-student relationship. Her heart began to race as she continued to scroll, unable to tear her eyes away. The messages were full of compliments, flirty remarks, and inside jokes. Sarah felt an odd sense of discomfort. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. There was no way Emily, quiet, reserved Emily, could be involved in something like this. Her hands trembling, Sarah read more, her eyes widening with each new exchange. The conversation was no longer just casual. It was intimate. They were planning to meet after hours, discussing private matters. The tone was undeniably romantic, and the messages seemed to suggest a growing emotional and physical connection. Emily's responses, while a little more guarded, still hinted at affection, a quiet longing. It didn't take long for Sarah to realize that the person on the other end of those messages was none other than Dr. Carter Hayes, Emily's professor. Suddenly, everything started to fall into place. Sarah remembered the whispers around campus, rumors about Dr. Hayes's charm, his ability to capture the attention of his students, his mysterious air. But this was something else entirely. A secret affair, hidden beneath the surface of their academic relationship, something no one had suspected. Sarah felt torn. Should she confront Emily? Should she tell someone who could stop this before it got any worse? Her mind raced, but her instincts told her to wait. She had to be sure, to gather more proof. The last thing she wanted was to make a mistake. After a few moments of hesitation, Sarah quickly took a screenshot of the conversation. She knew it was risky, but she felt an urgent need to hold on to it, to be certain of what she had seen. Emily returned from the restroom not long after, completely unaware of the discovery that had just shaken Sarah to her core. Sarah, trying to steady her racing heart, acted casual as they continued their conversation. But inside, Her mind was spinning. The perfect image of Emily she had built in her mind had cracked, and now Sarah wasn't sure what to do next. The next few days were filled with a growing sense of unease. Sarah kept her distance, feeling conflicted about the information she had uncovered. She didn't know whether to confront Emily directly or report what she had seen to the school, but the nagging feeling that Emily was in danger, that this secret affair could spiral into something far darker, wouldn't let her rest. As the days passed, Sarah found herself trapped in a storm of conflicting emotions. She had always prided herself on being a neutral observer, someone who didn't get involved in the drama that often unfolded on campus. But now she had discovered something far more dangerous than mere gossip, a secret affair between Emily and Dr. Hayes, a relationship that was both ethically and legally questionable. She couldn't ignore what she had seen, and it gnawed at her with every passing hour. But what could she do? What was the right thing to do? Sarah's mind kept returning to the evidence, the messages on Emily's phone. She replayed them in her head, each one carrying more weight than the last. The tone between the two was unmistakably flirtatious, the words laden with intimacy. As the days wore on, Sarah's curiosity turned into a deep sense of unease. She began to study Emily from a distance, watching her interactions with Dr. Hayes during class. At first, there was nothing out of the ordinary. Dr. Hayes maintained his usual professional demeanor, and Emily seemed calm and collected, as she always did. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that there was something between them, something that wasn't visible to anyone else. It wasn't just the messages anymore. It was the way Dr. Hayes looked at Emily, the way he spoke to her in those brief moments when they interacted during lectures or office hours. It was the subtle glances, the lingering smiles. Sarah had never noticed these things before, but now they stood out like a sore thumb. Dr. Hayes wasn't just a professor, he was a man in power, someone who controlled the academic futures of his students. And Emily, despite her intelligence and ambition, seemed caught in his web. The more Sarah observed, the more she began to realize the depth of the situation. Dr. Hayes wasn't just a mentor to Emily, he was manipulating her. His messages were full of praise, promises of a future in academia, and veiled threats about her academic success if she ever considered ending the affair. Sarah couldn't ignore the manipulation anymore. It was as if Dr. Hayes knew exactly how to keep Emily hooked, playing on her insecurities and fears about her career. She was young, vulnerable, and desperate for the approval of someone she admired, and Dr. Hayes was using that to his advantage. But Emily wasn't the only one who had been manipulated. Sarah began to feel like she too was being drawn into a dangerous game. She couldn't just sit back and watch as this affair unfolded. She had to do something. But what? Confronting Emily directly felt like an invasion of her privacy, and going to the authorities without more proof seemed like a drastic step. Sarah spent the following days obsessing over the decision. She dug through her notes, trying to find any other details that could shed light on the affair. She even considered going through Emily's phone again, but the thought of betraying her trust again stopped her. She wasn't sure how to move forward, but she knew she couldn't live with the knowledge of what was happening without doing something about it. Then, one night, Emily's name appeared in Sarah's inbox. It was an email, short and to the point, but it held something more, a desperate cry for help. Emily was reaching out, as if she had sensed that someone knew the truth, as if she knew that the walls were closing in on her. The email was filled with raw emotion. Emily admitted she'd been struggling with the affair for months. torn between the growing feelings for Dr. Hayes and the guilt that weighed on her shoulders. She confessed that she had begun to feel trapped, as though she was being pulled in different directions. She didn't know what to do, and she was afraid of what would happen if anyone found out. The email ended with a plea for understanding. "I don't know who to turn to. I don't know how to get out of this, but I know. I can't keep going like this anymore." For Sarah, it was a turning point. She now knew that Emily was aware of the gravity of the situation and was actively seeking a way out. But she also realized that Emily wasn't strong enough to break free on her own. It wasn't just about exposing the affair. It was about protecting Emily, who was now caught in a toxic cycle of manipulation. Sarah knew she had to make a choice, one that could change everything for both of them. As Sarah stared at the screen of her laptop, Emily's email still lingered in her mind. The raw vulnerability in Emily's words had shaken her deeply. It was clear that Emily was trapped in the situation, unable to break free from the grip of Dr. Hayes. There was no denying the power imbalance that had emerged between them, and Sarah couldn't ignore the growing feeling that Emily wasn't just caught up in an affair. She was being manipulated, controlled by someone who should have been guiding her academic career, not sabotaging it. The more Sarah thought about it, the more she realized she couldn't simply sit back and watch as Emily's life spiraled further out of control. But what could she do? Exposing the affair would not only ruin Dr. Hayes's career, but would destroy Emily's future as well. The stakes were high, and Sarah knew that the consequences of her next actions could ripple across both their lives. She could already feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Her mind raced through every possible course of action, but each option seemed to carry its own risks and uncertainties. For days, Sarah struggled with the dilemma. She knew that reporting the affair to the university was the right thing to do, but the thought of turning Emily in, someone she had once considered a quiet friend, felt like an unimaginable betrayal. What if Emily wasn't ready to come forward? What if Sarah was overstepping her bounds? If she exposed the affair without Emily's consent? She risked destroying the trust between them, and that could hurt Emily more than Dr. Hayes ever could. One evening, after an intense week of internal debate, Sarah decided that the right course of action was to speak to Emily first. She couldn't go behind her back. She had to know whether Emily was truly ready to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Sarah spent hours crafting the message, trying to be as gentle and understanding as possible, while still conveying the urgency of the situation. She needed to approach this with compassion, knowing that Emily was fragile and afraid. When Sarah finally hit send, she sat back, her heart pounding in her chest. She had reached out in the only way she could, hoping that Emily would see her as a friend, someone who wanted to help, not someone who was turning her world upside down. The response came much sooner than Sarah had expected. Emily's email was short and direct, and Sarah could sense the fear and uncertainty in her words. Emily admitted that she had been thinking about coming forward for a while now, but she didn't know where to turn. She didn't know who would believe her, and worse, she didn't want to lose everything she had worked for. But there was something new in Emily's message, a sense of determination. She spoke of the growing emotional toll the affair had taken on her, how the pressure of keeping such a huge secret had become unbearable. She had come to realize that it wasn't just about her career. It was about her mental and emotional well-being. The affair had left her isolated, and she didn't know how much longer she could keep pretending everything was fine. Emily ended the email with a simple statement. "I think I need help. I can't do this alone." Those words broke through Sarah's reservations. Emily was asking for help, and Sarah knew in that moment that the time had come. There was no turning back. It wasn't just about exposing the affair anymore. It was about protecting Emily from the damage it was already causing. Sarah realized that Emily's plea wasn't just an admission of vulnerability. It was a cry for someone to help her break free. Without hesitation, Sarah took the next step. She gathered all the evidence she had, the messages, the screenshots, and even the notes she had taken during her observations of Dr. Hayes and Emily. She carefully organized everything, ensuring that it painted a clear picture of the manipulation that had taken place. When she was ready, Sarah made the decision to forward everything to the university administration. She knew this would be the hardest step of all, but she had made her choice. She could no longer watch as Emily's life fell apart in the hands of someone who should have been her protector, not her abuser. As the email left her inbox, Sarah felt an overwhelming mixture of relief and anxiety. The truth was now out there, and there was no going back. She had done what she believed to be right, but the fear of what would come next, how Emily would react, how Dr. Hayes would respond, hung over her like a dark cloud. But there was one thing Sarah was certain of: the truth, no matter how painful, would set both Emily and herself free. The wheels were now in motion, and the outcome was beyond her control. All Sarah could do was wait. The days after Sarah sent the email to the university were the longest of her life. She was consumed with anticipation, replaying every moment leading up to the decision in her mind. What would happen now? What would Emily think when she found out that Sarah had taken things into her own hands? Would Emily be angry or grateful? And how would Dr. Hayes respond when the truth came to light? The uncertainty gnawed at Sarah's conscience, but deep down, she knew she had made the right choice. Emily was no longer alone, and the burden of secrecy had been lifted from her shoulders, but there was no denying that the fallout was imminent. The university's investigation began swiftly. Within hours of Sarah's email, Emily was summoned to meet with the campus administration. Sarah hadn't heard from her since sending the message, and she found herself desperately hoping that Emily had found some semblance of peace in knowing the truth was now out there. Sarah had also been asked to come forward to provide her observations, and she had done so without hesitation. The evidence was damning: the messages, the tone of their conversations, the emotional manipulation Dr. Hayes had exerted over Emily. It was all there, laid bare for the administration to see. As the investigation unfolded, the truth began to unravel at a rapid pace. Dr. Hayes, once a respected professor with a spotless reputation, was placed on administrative leave while the university conducted a full review of the evidence. He had always maintained a professional demeanor in public, but the private messages told a different story, one of exploitation and abuse of power. The campus was in shock. Students who had admired Dr. Hayes for his academic achievements were now questioning everything they thought they knew about him. The fallout was swift, and soon the media caught wind of the scandal. Meanwhile, Emily's life seemed to be in a state of turmoil. She was under intense scrutiny, with whispers following her everywhere she went. The campus community, which had once revered her for her intelligence and quiet strength, now looked at her with suspicion. Some students expressed sympathy, but many others blamed her for her role in the affair. Sarah could sense that Emily was struggling, torn between the relief of the truth coming out and the guilt she felt for allowing things to go as far as they had. For the first time in weeks, Sarah reached out to Emily. She was unsure of how Emily would respond, but she couldn't leave things like this. Emily's response came later that day, and Sarah could hear the weight of the past few days in her words. Emily admitted that she was overwhelmed. She had never expected everything to unfold so quickly, and she felt like her world was crashing down around her. Yet beneath the pain there was a sense of gratitude in Emily's tone. She thanked Sarah for what she had done, for giving her the strength to come forward, and for protecting her when she hadn't known how to protect herself. Despite the relief, the road ahead was uncertain. Dr. Hayes's actions had set off a chain of events that would leave lasting scars on both of their lives. The university's investigation continued, and while the school promised to support Emily through the process, the emotional toll was undeniable. Emily had lost the professor she had once trusted, and Dr. Hayes's reputation was in ruins. But Emily's future, though uncertain, was no longer controlled by his influence. For the first time in months, she could see a way forward, a future that was no longer clouded by guilt or fear. Months later, Emily returned to her studies with a renewed sense of purpose. The whispers on campus had quieted, but the experience had left her forever changed. She would carry the scars of the affair with her, but she had emerged stronger and more resilient than before. She had faced the truth and reclaimed her life. Dr. Hayes, on the other hand, had been fired and stripped of his academic standing. He faced disciplinary action, and his career was effectively over. As for Sarah, she knew she had made the right choice. But the road to healing for both Emily and herself was far from over. The truth had come out, but the emotional aftermath would take time to process. Both of them had faced the harsh reality of abuse of power, manipulation, and the dangerous consequences of keeping secrets. The experience had shaped them in ways they couldn't yet fully understand, but they had both learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes the truth, no matter how painful, is the only way to move forward. And in the end, it was the truth that had set them free.